You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 21st of August 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Briefing in association with Addis. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Tom Edwards. Alongside me today, what a treat, it's Chris Chermak. Chris, looking forward to today's show?
Very excited to be here. It is a Thursday show, which is always exciting, but we'll get to that a bit later.
We will indeed, Chris. Plenty to look forward to on today's programme. Monocle's Istanbul correspondent Hannah Cinder-Smith is here in the studio. Great to see you, Hannah. Plenty to catch up on, but what will you be telling us about today?
So I'm going to be talking about the news that's just come out that Turkey is due to host the Nato conference next year for the first time in 22 years. Obviously a big boon for President Erdoğan, so we'll be talking about what that means for him.
Plenty more from Hannah on the way shortly. Plus, a Monocle editor Josh Fennett will join us for the chat too. It is a Thursday, as Chris mentioned, which means several things, one of which my favourite. It's global countdown time. Faye is here, of course. Where are you taking us today, Fernando?
It's a special one, Tom. As always, today I'll take you on a journey of the best Brazilian telenovela soundtracks.
I almost don't believe those can exist, but I trust you, Faye, implicitly. All that and more ahead here on The Briefing with me, Tom Edwards, and Chris Chermak. Hey, very good afternoon to you from London. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Delighted to have you with us on this Thursday edition of The Briefing. I'm Tom Edwards. I do have the great pleasure of co-hosting today's programme with Chris Chermak. I nearly did a drum roll then, Chris, to add a bit of
I don't know what you were getting at. You took a pause.
This is quite jolly and exciting though, isn't it?
It is special. Why not do a sort of double hosting? Why not? We're both here. It's been a big week. It's fun to be here.
Well, I'm going to see you and raise you, me and you, with two more special guests in the studio.
This is a very full studio.
It is. It's brimful. I mentioned her and we heard from her a moment ago. Monocle's Istanbul correspondent Hannah Cinder-Smith is here. Hannah, lovely to see you. I haven't seen you since Istanbul, the conference last year, I believe, in person. What a jolly time that was. You've been keeping yourself very busy. What sort of things have you been getting up to?
So for Monocle, I've been, I've been in Syria earlier this year, also looking at Istanbul's food scene, which of course all of you who came to Istanbul had a little bit of a sample of. I'm lucky enough to sample it every day. I don't want to make you jealous. So those have been the main things, but I think, one thing also to mention, all of you who came and saw that area of Istanbul where the conference was, the Haliç, the Golden Horn, which was quite industrial, the redevelopment of that area is just going at such a pace. We've just had an announcement of a new hotel and cultural centre opening in that area as well. So I really think, that area of Istanbul was so well chosen by you guys for the conference. It's really turning into a kind of cultural hub.
I can't take much credit for the selections. Another man who I'm pretty sure was there and enjoying the scenery, and by the look of him, some of that local food as well. It's Monocle's editor, Josh Fennett. Welcome, Josh.
Why doesn't it surprise me that the place we picked for the conference has since been demolished and turned into something better than what we visited there, Tom?
Where we go, others follow, Josh. But that was great fun, wasn't it? And amazing. I hadn't been to Istanbul before. I don't know if you'd visited, but, a truly amazing city. And all those cliches, the energy, the dynamism, writ large everywhere, every street I turned down.
Yeah, and amazing. And a mega city by any measure. And also, the interesting thing, with a slightly weaker lira, more and more people have seen Turkey. They've explored they've been up on one of those famous hot air balloons in Cappadocia. I don't know if anyone actually does that, but the pictures are everywhere. And, they've found themselves in this incredible country. The thing I really took from it is also a little bit, people are so generous, the food's amazing, we'll talk probably about, Turkey's soft power, but Istanbul's a little bit unyielding when you get there as well. You have to bend to it. You have to cross the water. Things take time. Not everyone speaks English. So, the amazing journey for me, I think, as well, having been to Istanbul a few times, but, punctuated by many years in between, is how much the city stays itself, even with so many people going to visit it. And I think that's the thing that captivates you about it as well, right, Hannah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I arrived in Turkey in early 2013, thinking I would stay for 4 weeks. And the fact that I'm still there, I think, is a testament to everything you're saying. But, Istanbul, and Turks will say this as well, it's not just visitors or, foreign residents like me. It is captivating because at the same time, it's utterly bewitching and utterly infuriating.
And it kind of works and doesn't work in almost every way. I mean, I don't want to diss the company that did the sound production on the day, but getting stuff done, you need to follow certain rules and certain processes, and the guy who says yes isn't necessarily the guy you're talking to. So it was an education for us as well. But, things do work in Istanbul and in Turkey as well. So there's something to be said for it.
Hannah, maybe to get to one of the topics we wanted to discuss, I'm curious about the difference when you talk about Istanbul, which we know I've been to as well. It is such a chaotic lifestyle. It's such a big city. What is Ankara like by comparison?
I was going to say chalk and cheese. That's too cliche, but it is. I mean, Ankara, so I'll give you a little bit of historical background. When in 1919, when the Ottoman Empire was dismantled, Istanbul, which of course used to be Constantinople, was sort of shut down as the capital, and the new Turkish Republic created this new capital, literally a new city in the middle of the Anatolian plateau, which was Ankara. It was a village. It was nothing. The urbanites of Constantinople look at this place and say, what?
But this is like Washington, D.C. in the States.
Exactly.
This happens in a lot of places, but has it developed since then?
I mean,
Not really.
It is a developed city. What's really interesting, I've had some friends who have moved from Istanbul to Ankara, and of course all the Istanbuls, like, what are you doing? But actually once they get there are certain things about Ankara, particularly if you have a young family, which are very, very appealing, which would be rather less chaos, a lot less chaos, wider pavements. The traffic's still hellish, but you have a lot of parks, open spaces. It's planned because it was this planned bureaucratic city. So I do know people who've moved there and have managed to find a charm. I think
The slower pace of life.
a slower pace of life, and I think if you can sort of find your group of friends there, but it is certainly, when you compare it to the chaos and the vitality and everything that is bewitching about Istanbul, I'm never too sad to leave Ankara. I'll put it that way.
Well, one thing that won't be much better in 2026 is the traffic, particularly when the Nato summit rolls into town. But that certainly might be a fillip for Turkey's soft power. And we know it'll be an opportunity for some Erdoğan, or one imagines, for some Erdoğan grandstanding. Just tell us, you mentioned this at the top of the show, Hannah. What does that mean for him, for brand Turkey more broadly? It's quite a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I think, this decision to have the NATO summit in Turkey in 2026 is so linked to the figure of Erdoğan. And I think that's really represented by the fact that this summit is going to be in his palace in Bishtape in Ankara. The last time that Turkey hosted the NATO summit was 2004. That time it was in Istanbul. Turkey is a very, very different country and occupies a very, very different place in many ways, within NATO, also within Europe, than it did 22 years ago. Erdoğan, of course, has, moved from being, this figure who, when he first came in, was seen almost as a liberaliser, a guy who was going to solve the Kurdish issue in Turkey. He was going to take Turkey into the EU. He was going to sort of turn it into this modern, strong economy. And of course, over the past 10 years, that's entirely changed. He's really become a sort of almost a prototype of, the new European autocrat. Democracy and human rights in Turkey have absolutely plummeted. Tens of thousands of political prisoners in jail in Turkey. And yet, at the same time, Erdoğan has managed to position himself as this leader almost with a kind of unique ability to bring warring factions to his country, particularly Russia and Ukraine. We've seen, the meetings there over the years of the war. So it really, it's also that, Europe has changed around him and the world has changed around him, and the world and Europe needs Turkey now. This is the main thing.
Well, and the world has changed around, as you say, this, which has led everything to kind of move eastwards, hasn't it, to some degree? Josh, I'm kind of curious what you feel of that too, because it isn't just, say, Turkey is sort of the eastern border of Europe, so things have moved there, but they've also moved to the Middle East, to the UAE, and sort of other countries around there too. Is that kind of the hub for mediation, a lot of different soft power things these days? Maybe the way that, I don't know, Geneva, like certain sort of European capitals used to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be an unaligned state sometimes, particularly when no one thinks the global rules-based order is worth much, and the smugness of certain states that would once have held that mantle. has been wiped off their face, to put it frankly. Some people will see Turkey as a more level playing field for conducting their negotiations. Chris, I even remember us sending you to a conference in Ankara.
The Antalya Diplomacy Forum.
Antalya Diplomacy Forum.
That one just after Ukraine-Russia war started, when the last time, I believe, the two foreign ministers met, Lavrov and Kuleba.
But yeah, I think, as we redraw the maps and as we recalibrate our expectations of what it means to be a place to hold a debate where everything's free and fair. The Gulf does well. It's a part of the world where there's comparative safety, where your money in your bank account's safe, where you can say what you want within reason. And I think those are the new playgrounds for the kind of discussions that are going on in a world that is lacking the calmness of everyone going to Geneva and knowing that the rules won't change the second they get there.
Hannah, let me ask you a somewhat playful question. If you were suddenly put in charge, even just for a flicker of a moment, of the agenda for that NATO summit, give us a sense. What's a thing that you think will be prominent? I think we can imagine some of the main ones, or something maybe that's more left field that should be higher up the plan for discourse. I know it's a long way out, but give us a sense of, if you could sort of, I don't know, shape that narrative a little bit, what might we be hearing more about?
Sure. I mean, I think, of course, the big issue is defence spending, right? NATO, particularly America, wants everyone to spend more money on very traditional forms of defence, building up armies, building up those traditional weapons arsenals. I would argue, actually, they probably need to be paying far more attention to the more asymmetrical kinds of warfare, the things like cyber warfare, the things like, what we see Putin doing, for example, in the Balkans, very, very cleverly manipulating kind of ethnic divides, knocking countries that were on the path towards NATO and the EU off course. These kind of non-lethal soft power weapons, I would call them, that Putin employs very, very effectively, but so does Erdoğan, actually. He's also very, very good at it. I think, NATO probably needs to start thinking a little bit more broadly when they talk about defence.
Just finally then, Josh, you were talking about the sort of mediation roles of sort of the UAE and others. The one thing we didn't discuss, and actually maybe a quick thought from both of you, but also the Middle East right now with what's happening in Gaza, the Palestinian territories, is that an area where mediation matters? Some of these somewhat neutral countries in the region have actually managed to play a pretty big role.
Yeah, or maybe everyone accepts that no one's neutral, and that is a part they've moved forward on. Is Qatar neutral on this subject as it harbours, leaders of Hamas, and offers them safety? Perhaps not. I'm not quite sure. And just to pick up on Hannah's final point as well, why don't I get to be NATO Secretary General for a day?
Well, I was coming to that, Josh. Give me a second.
But do you know what I'd put on the agenda?
Go on.
There's a wonderful column in our Out Today, September issue of the magazine by our security correspondent, Gorana Gercic, and she talks about why investment in something as simple as roads and infrastructure is vital to defence spending, because if you were to roll a few tanks down the high street in Germany, the chances are the bridges would collapse and they wouldn't get through the tunnels. So we've got a curious situation where we're buying hardware, some for the kind of war that we're seeing fought in Ukraine and on Ukrainian soil, but we've kind of got the wrong gear for it, and we also have the wrong environment for it. So I'll put that on the agenda, and then I'll hand Mr. Rutte back the crown.
Nicely done. And that magazine is available now. Hannah, are you selling anything at the moment? You've written a book on Erdoğan. It's never. You can always throw a quick call to action in there if you want people to do that.
Am I selling anything? I'm actually writing a new book. Can I sell that?
Go on, quickly. You've got 20 seconds.
Excellent. So it's a book called Hinterlands. It is about the disputed regions around the fringes of Europe, which have become the kind of front lines in this new kind of war that I was just talking about, this very, very hybrid war. So we're talking about places like Bosnia, Cyprus, Nagorno-Karabakh in the Caucasus, Crimea, and I'm looking very much at how Putin, but also Erdoğan, are using things, like historical ties, language ties, to really try and, divide those populations, create problems for NATO on its fringes. So that'll be out next year.
That's exactly 20 seconds. It's very good. Very smart people. Hannah, Lucinda Smith, what a delight to welcome you to the studio. Josh Fennett, thanks for joining us as well. Chris and I continue with the show The Other Side of This. Here's Tom Webb with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Tom. Israel's military has launched the first steps of an operation to take over Gaza City, and IDF forces are already holding the outskirts of the region. Hundreds of thousands of displaced people are sheltering in the city as it holds some of the last remnants of critical infrastructure remaining in Gaza. China's President Xi Jinping has made a rare visit to Tibet to mark the 60th anniversary of the consolidation of Chinese rule. Xi urged the building of a modern socialist Tibet that is united, prosperous, civilized, harmonious, and beautiful. Taiwan's high-speed rail corporation is to introduce new rules that require passengers watching videos on mobile phones, tablets and laptops to use headphones. Customers talking on the phone, they must now move down the vestibule. New rules come into force next month, with those that contravene them and do not heed warnings could be removed from the train. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Tom.
Tom, thank you very much. Indeed, more news coming your way at the top of the next hour. Exactly 1:15 here on Monocle Radio. This is The Briefing with me, Tom Edwards, and Chris Chermack. Joined in the studio, it's a parade of the talents today. Virginia McLeod is here, our head of book publishing. Good afternoon, Virginia. How the devil are you?
Very well, thank you.
Now, I don't know if you would listen to that news item Tom Webb was telling us about Taiwanese rail customers getting into trouble for antisocial headphone use. Let me ask you, you're just back in Blighty. How was the headphone etiquette on transport where you've just been? See what I've done here?
This is such a good question. I have a lot of opinions on this.
Okay, go on.
Mostly generated by my experiences in my hometown of London. But to answer your question, in Thailand, I was in Bangkok and in the north, I would say they are very good at using headphones when they are having a conversation or listening to music or television.
Oh,
I did not see any...
Are they polite?
I would say yes. Unlike here in London, where I have had recourse to politely ask some individuals to please would they don their earphones.
Politely ask / upbraid? Does it depend? It depends what side of the bed you've got out of, right?
No, but you can only do it in a polite way. Otherwise, I think you're just perhaps compounding the problem. So would you mind? I would be grateful if.
It does sort of beg the question, doesn't it, that do these rules come into force in places where they're not necessarily needed because people are already polite compared to London, where we could very much use it, couldn't we, Tom?
I would welcome it. But you make the point, you were in Thailand, of course, a Monocle handbook coming out next year. Actually, let's come to that in a second. Maybe should we tackle these things chronologically? That's more pleasing that way, Virginia. Shall we talk first up about designers, and shall we talk about them on sofas?
Why don't we?
Tell me more.
Yeah, so the book is called Designers on Sofas, and it pretty much does what it says on the tin, but so much more, as you'd expect from a Monocle book. So we have selected 50 designers from around the world. They're architects, they're furniture designers, product designers from all continents, North, South America, Africa, Asia, Australia, and all across Europe. Big names in the business. We've got Patricia Archiola, we've got Stephen Hull, we've got Jay Osgerby, and 50 really amazing names, men and women, doing brilliant things. But what we get to do, because we're Monocle, is go and visit them at home or in their studio and with a photographer and a reporter and find out about them and their sofa, why they designed it, if they designed it, why they chose it, if they chose it, is it built in or something off the shelf or whatever. So that's kind of mostly what the book is about.
I have to say, Virginia, this goes to kind of what Monocle does, doesn't it? But there must have been oddly some excitement about this among those that you were interviewing. Like, it's not something they would normally get asked to do, and yet this is kind of the way that we make stories kind of shine that other people just wouldn't do.
It was so great. We sort of put out the question, would you be willing to, would you like to? And almost invariably people said, I'd love to do that. And this is some very well-known people. They're kind of like stars in their field, or even sort of stars in the world at large. And they welcomed us in, and they and we met their kids, we met their partners, we met dogs. We've got lots of
pets in the mix.
Yeah, we've got a good half dozen or more dogs.
Let me ask you, Virginia, one question. Did anybody, and this is tricky because obviously I guess you can't name names given where I'm taking this, but well, maybe you will. Did anyone surprise you on the up or downside where you were like, oh, I bet I know this will be a kind of classic, very demure, mid-century piece, and then the team get there and it's like, wow, that wasn't what I was expecting. Can you tantalise us with a couple of the sort of surprise selections?
Well, I think Yinka Ilori springs to mind. He's a British-Nigerian designer, and his work is all about like colour and pattern and blending sort of cultural references and so on. So his was great, and I think everything he does is almost unexpected. But the sofa in question, he bought it on eBay, so it sort of started as nothing special, but he also loves to upcycle, recycle and reuse. So then he applied his own fabric to this. So it's in the shape of a traditional rolled arm sofa, but then he's Yinka Ilori'd it, and it's turned into something absolutely glorious that only he could do. So that was a good one. And the other one that surprises me, but I thought it was really nice, is that we've got a smattering of IKEA and Blue Dot and Crate and Barrel in amongst our casinos and B&B Ateliers and so on. So it's a lovely mix.
And with like touches as well at the same time. Is that the idea, even you take something from Crate and Barrel?
No, like for the Crate and Barrel one, for example, that's Alex Mustonen, who's the director of Snarkitecture in New York. He renovated a cottage in the Catskills as a home away from New York, and they bought this Blue Dot sofa as a great family sofa. They became so fond of it that they basically moved it from room to room and renovated around it and made sure that the room that it was destined to be in would fit it. It's become something they're so fond of. So often these IKEAs and Blue Dots and Crate and Barrels, they're not necessarily like, well, one day when I can afford, it will be something else. For some of these people, it's like, I deliberately chose it because it's perfect for me and my family.
You actually lean into it. That is really interesting.
And that's out in October, which is very exciting. And it's not alone. I believe also out in October, our next travel handbook. And we're keeping things, again, close to home or home from home, as we sat here in London.
Indeed. So the next handbook in the series is on Switzerland, our beloved home from home, as you say. So excited about that, and excited to bring a whole, maybe fresh take on Switzerland to our readers. So yes, we've got mountains, we've got chocolate, we've got watches and clocks. But even in those categories, we'll give you the Monocle take on which mountains and why to go there. Maybe it's an amazing piece of architecture. Maybe it's a chalet that does service or something like in a beautiful way that you should go and check out. Not just traditional chocolatiers, but who's doing something new and different and exciting in the world of chocolate, and the same with watches, of course.
Was there something we learned from this, Virginia? Is it sort of about sort of Monocle saying, we do Switzerland well, we know Switzerland because this has been part of our ethos for a while, or did we learn some new things about the country as well through this?
Both of those things, for sure. So one of the things that I learned is a great culture of contemporary making in Switzerland. Perhaps people consider it more to be a sort of culture of tradition and so on. But, amazing, creative, interesting, intelligent people making all sorts of things, from skis, of course, but also jewellery and fashion and leather goods. So there's a lot happening there, and it's filled with people doing amazing things.
Virginia, just briefly, we started off talking a little bit about Thailand, and we're looking ahead into 2026. It's funny, Hannah was talking about the amazing chaotic beauty of Istanbul at the top of this show. Bangkok, a vast city again, so much dynamism, energy. It's a share of chaos, but Thailand, again, also vast, so diverse, so much to talk about. I don't know, tell us one thing you learned on your trip that maybe is going to be reflected in this handbook when it comes out next year.
Oh, yeah. So much going on in Thailand. We had a team of people reporting there for a week and a half, a couple of weeks ago. We're kind of just back. We kind of met in Bangkok, and then we sort of branched off out into the west, the north, the south, and I did the north. So that was great for me, just to see what's going on in the north and to see how kind of different it is, both from Bangkok and from other parts of the country. So Thailand isn't just maybe what some people think it is. There's a whole lot more regional variety going on. I think the main thing that captured my heart is how committed everyone I met, from chefs to restaurateurs to managing directors of luxury hotels, whether or not they were Thai or whether they'd come from somewhere else and were working in Thailand, the commitment to local culture, local traditions, local making, everything from growing herbs to weaving textiles at indigo, all of these things that we kind of think of about Thailand, they're being maintained and growing. So there's such a lively culture that bridges, or red thread, between old and new Thailand.
What a slate of titles to look forward to. People can find out more about them at monocle.com. Virginia McLeod, Head of Book Publishing, thanks for whetting our appetites about all of these lovely books that are coming out soon. You're listening to The Briefing here on Monocle Radio. You know what that means, lucky listeners around the world. It is global countdown time. That means we say, welcome, Fernando Augusto Pacheco.
I'm very happy to be here because, as you know, it's a special global countdown. I do say this almost every week.
You say this all the time. We were talking about this earlier, Fernando. You've kind of become fascinated with the specials.
Because I think the global countdown is more than just the weekly charts in the world. I think there are some little pockets of information that relates to charts as well that I think is interesting for our listeners.
Fernando, pass me that record. Fernando has some props, listeners. I've got a couple of records here. Faye, just quickly, it's an audio medium. Just quickly describe the covers of the two records that I'm holding in my right and left hand here.
They're a little bit saucy. They are the covers of some iconic Brazilian telenovelas, and I collect them. One of them has a man showing his buttocks, and then the other one is a beautiful lady in the tropical beach in the state of Bahia, for example. Also,
she's fairly nude,
but not all the covers are people nude. There's this one. She's just kind of, she's
got a
looking demure.
She's got a kind of singlet on. So talk to me about telenovelas and the role of music in these, because it's really kind of baked into the very fabric of these programs often. Tell us why this is such a fascination, and maybe lead us to the first bit of music we're going to hear.
Absolutely. So basically, if you're an artist in Brazil, at least in the 80s and the 90s, your career would make it or break it if you managed to get a song in a telenovela. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. The power perhaps is diminished, but it's still quite relevant. I was talking to Chris this morning on The Globalist, talking about the relationship between Brazil and France. And I just pointed out that in the current telenovela, I have to say, there are 4 songs in French out of 15, which is quite a lot. And I think that's soft power. That's soft power from France in Brazil as well. So there's always interesting elements. But this time we're looking at the best-selling telenovela soundtracks of all time, okay? So this is a little historical journey. We're going to start at number 5. And I think the author of the telenovela relates to the song so much, and I'll explain why. And number 5 is the soundtrack for Laços de Família in 2000, which is Manuel Carlos. And his telenovelas are very much about the dramas of very upper-class families in Leblon, a neighborhood in Rio. They're very specific, but it's very gentle. It's very bossa nova. And the song we're going to hear, it was the theme of this song, of this telenovela. It is Bebel Gilberto with So Nice, Summer Samba, soundtrack of Laços de Família.
There would be very nice, someone to love me right. There would be very nice, someone to understand each little dream in me. Someone to take my hand, to be a team with me.
So what's the vibe here? Is it like Copacabana 90210? Is this a sort of vibe?
Yes, it's just Leblon, actually. Because Leblon is where is a very sedated neighborhood. And the main character of his telenovelas, all of them, it's called Helena. And it's usually a very wealthy lady, and there's some... She's divided between two loves. It's very beautiful to see. I mean, he does love Rio de Janeiro, the author, but not much happens in his telenovelas.
Is that a good telenovela?
No, but sometimes in this world we need some peace and relaxation.
Well, they used to say that about Seinfeld, right? It's a show about nothing.
Exactly.
Didn't stop that from going.
I was struck by that song being in English, by the way. Is that rare?
Well, we're going to find out a little bit more in this ranking, because there are a lot of songs in English and French as well. It's not just Brazilian songs, it's very...
But no telenovelas to listen to in English, I'm assuming. They don't dub them?
Some of them they do, but they should do more. But now you wanted a Brazilian act, right?
I mean, we expect some Brazilian acts in Brazilian telenovelas.
Let's go back to 1978, and that's the telenovela Dancing Days. And, I mean, it's in the name.
Saturday Night Fever vibes here?
Yes, so very much so. And it's the story about Julia, a woman that was imprisoned for 11 years because she ran over a man who was escaping from the bank robbery, something like that. You know, she didn't mean it. And
Oh, that's fine.
But then he robbed the bank in the first place, so yeah, he should probably be
I
blamed.
can't wait to hear this one.
But then she becomes a disco diva, and you know it's all good. We're gonna hear As Frenéticas with Dancing Days. It's a girl group from Rio, and that's the main theme of the soap. Let's have a listen. Classic.
I immediately had At the Car Wash coming into my head. I mean, there's so many different versions.
I've got to say,
of
listeners,
disco tunes.
Chris Chermak started throwing out some decisive John Travolta-esque shapes there.
Exactly.
I don't know what we've just
I
watched.
did just go to see the immersive Grease musical here in London.
I'm sure you did.
He does love a musical, Sean.
I do love a musical.
Guys, number 3, we're changing direction here. And that's the good thing about telenovelas. They're not all the same. So we're going to 1988, Vale Tudo. At the moment, there's a remake of this telenovela on air right now. And then this telenovela was very acid, if I may say. It really criticized Brazil in a way. The main question of the telenovela was like, is it worth being honest in Brazil? So it's all about corruption, and there was this powerful villain, Odete Reutemann. It was really iconic. I would say it was a landmark of Brazilian TV. And even the song relates to those themes. I will translate later, but let's have a listen to Gal Costa, Brasil. It's exactly what you guys understood. Brazil, show your
Brazil.
face.
We heard the Brazil. We don't need to translate that one
But
bit.
it's like, show your face. My credit card is a razor. So he does talk about overconsumption in Brazil and how, it does talk about corruption as well, which is a problem. And that's why this telenovela was from 1988, but it's still very relevant.
She's really spitting those lyrics out.
Exactly.
So is it kind of like Dallas Dynasty vibes, but for Brazil?
In a way, but I
Okay.
would say it's a little bit more realist in a way as well.
Okay.
This soap was generally quite, as I said, it didn't age the story. That's why there's a current remake. Some people say it's not as good as the original.
And is that interrogating contemporary culture and contemporary corruption and the same hypocrisies about
we're back
high
to
society?
frustration.
Yeah,
We're
interesting.
still the same. And number 2, don't get confused, guys. I did say that there are some international artists, but there's a very interesting story about this one. That's the telenovela that I'm going to talk about is O Salvador da Pátria, which is also a telenovela with political connotations. It was about a very naive kind of man who suddenly becomes this town hero because he was involved in a political scandal. It also showed kind of the dark side of Brasilia. But the song from the soap opera, it is the Pet Shop Boys, Domino Dancing. I will explain to you guys later. Let's have a listen. The second best-selling of all time.
Do the Pet Shop Boys know that they're this big in Brazil because of a telenovela?
Thank you for the question, Chris. They do know. And in 2011, they released an album only for the Brazilian market called Party, where they had 16 tracks that were featured in Brazilian telenovelas.
Amazing.
So they are smart, and that's why they're so big in Brazil.
Now, it's interesting. You and I, Faye, previously have bonded over our understanding and appreciation of the cultural significance of the Pet Shop Boys. I think coming from maybe slightly different directions, but they transcend, genres certainly, and now we discover geographies. Fascinating.
They were one of the first things about the UK that I really, really loved from a young age, perhaps because I was watching too many telenovelas.
Is there such a thing as too many? We think the answer is definitively yes. Nevertheless, Faye, you've brought us towards the top of the tree. So are you going to play for us now, was it the biggest selling ever?
The biggest selling ever, and I was there. I was alive. I did buy it when it was released, but in CD, not vinyls. So I'm really sorry I don't have it here. The telenovela is called Rei do Gado, a King of Cattle, which again was a telenovela in the countryside of Brazil. And it did speak about land reform. It was quite serious, but quite emotional as well, about two family dynasties. And they were kind of king of cattle. I mean, they were deciding who is the biggest one of them all. Let's have a listen to this beautiful song by Zé Ramalho, an amazing Brazilian artist. And the song's called Admirável Gado Novo. Let's have a listen.
Flutuar. Não voam nem se pode flutuar. Não voam nem se pode flutuar. Vida de gado, todo marcado todo feliz.
Fernando, was this the version of sort of, for comparing, this is like the Brazilian Western or like Yellowstone vibes?
Yes.
Where are we going?
Yes, plus the addition of land reform and there is also this kind of background of Brasilia. And this song in particular, I mean, I did, copy this from Google, but nevertheless, it's about the contradictions of capitalist societies under authoritarian regimes. That's very current, isn't it?
Wow. By what margin does that dominate the chart? Is it out there way on its own?
A big margin. It was a success, and I think Globo understood at that time that, they usually have lots of urban telenovelas, but they went to the countryside and it connected with people. So they decided to do more and more in other regions of Brazil, not just Rio and São Paulo, and I think that's been a feature that still works today.
Are there going to be offshoots of that one as well?
I'm sure. There's been a sequel to the soundtrack, actually, because it was so successful.
Fernando, it's been a while on Global Countdown, but I always asked you, Desert Island Disc style, if you, Fernando, could only take one of those with you and play it daily from here until your end days, which one of the five would it be?
Brazil! By Vale Tudo, for sure.
Excellent
I think it's
choice.
a powerful song.
That is Fernando Augusto Pacheco with a tip-top Global Countdown for you this Thursday here on Monocle Radio. And that, listeners, brings us to the end of the show. Thanks, first up, to Chris Chermak. Chris, that was great fun, was it not?
It was good fun. Good to have chats with all our guests. Great. Thanks to you, Tom.
No, my pleasure. Thanks to our producer, Tom Webb, our researcher, Henry King, and our studio manager, Flynn Simons. The briefing will return at the same time tomorrow. Of course, that is noon London time, 1300 if you're listening on CET. From Chris, from me, from all the team, wherever you are in the world. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.